And that is what we're going to discuss today on Panorama, the prediction of NIMET that Kaduna State is among the states in this country that might likely experience flooding this year. And with me in the studio here is the Director of Disaster Risk Reduction of SEMA, Kaduna State, Hussaini Abdullahi. Sir, you are welcome to our studio.
Welcome.
From the report, you have seen the water has already risen to its level, and most likely, as NIMET has predicted, Kaduna might experience flooding. I know there has been campaigns and awareness going on in the state on both social media and the conventional media. What have you people been doing so far since this prediction?
Well, since the prediction sometime in February, by NIMET, following the release of the flood outlook by NISA, our Executive Secretary, Dr. Usman Hayatu Mazadu, directed us to swing into action to see how we can disseminate this information. We developed a work plan that will include all our stakeholders, whereby we have been organizing weekly meetings with the critical stakeholders, and we have been visiting the flood-prone areas. Of course, Kaduna was part of the state that were predicted to experience floods. Here in Kaduna, sometimes we know, even if there is prediction or not by NIMET or NISA, Kaduna State, considering our geographical location, we used to experience flooding annually in some part of the state, considering especially those local government areas that are located within the Kaduna River Kaduna. So we swung into action by convening series of mitigative meetings with stakeholders, including the traditional rulers and communities leaders. Again,
Director, we have done a series of reports on this issue of flooding, and like you acknowledged, this is not the first time Kaduna State is experiencing flooding. What we have observed is these bad attitudes of the citizens, habit of blocking drainages, and sometimes people building on waterways. What have you people been doing in collaboration with other agencies like Kasubda and Kajis in the state to prevent all of these things?
Yeah, as you are aware, there is an existing standing committee on flood assessment in Kaduna State way back since 2020. This committee is still functional. It was charged with responsibilities of identifying the causes and providing immediate, short-time, long-time solutions to the menace of the flood. So the Executive Secretary have been up and doing in ensuring that the committee is always in touch with the realities. Again, as we all know, disaster usually happen and is local in nature. So the State Emergency Management Agency.
How local is a flood?
Well,
I think
all
it's
disasters, not only flood.
A natural disaster.
All disasters are local because it's happened in a particular locality.
Okay,
that is
okay. It happens in a political locality.
So considering
but it's a natural occurrence.
Well, to some extent, it's a natural occurrence, but about 90% of what we experience in this part of the world mostly is human-induced.
Yeah, because of attitude of people, like what I said, the blocking of the drainages.
That's why if you observe, all along what we used to have is just a flash flood. It's not a serious flood that results into a disaster that can is beyond our capacity. Usually it's flash.
Well, we've seen flooding in Kaduna, displacing people, destroying properties, even in some cases where some people were sustaining injuries, particularly in places like Kigo Road, in Tudunwada, Pashama. Sometimes you see the flood even reaching to the extent of breaking some of these grips.
Yeah, with the establishment of the standing committee, we were able to minimize and mitigate the effect of the flood, because now the agency has established coordinators in the 3 senatorial zone, equipping them with manpower and equipment to work. So we are going 24/7. They are working and sensitizing people. If you observe what we are experiencing now, some local government have already been experiencing the flood. Places like Kechia, Zaria, Sabungari, recently we are having. In fact, as I'm talking to you now, some of our staff are still in Zaria trying to see how we can mitigate.
Well, Director, because of time, let me ask you this last question. Flooding is a natural disaster. Sometimes you cannot prevent it. But what are some of the measures SEMA has put in place for resettlement for these people that might likely be affected to feel some sigh of relief? What are some of these measures? Do you have safe camps?
Yeah, part of our preparedness, and there is we have already identified safe grounds for the nearer to the flood-prone areas, which of course all the communities have been sensitized and informed about the locations. The agency is seriously in contact with the locals, and already all the flood-prone areas have been visited and sensitized. Safe areas have been allocated.
I think, Director, because of time, we need to stop here, and thank you very much for coming. We've been talking to Director of Disaster and Risk Reduction of SEMA on this issue of flooding in Kaduna State.